When you love what you do, it's contagious. The passion, the pride, the desire, it all starts from the top, and it affects our staff, our students, our parents, our entire community. Jennifer Rower, the CEO of BrainNation in San Antonio, she gets it. She talks about creating excellence in education for the joy of it. She's my guest on this episode of the Educators Among Us podcast.
Welcome to the Educators Among Us podcast, where we share motivational messages and inspiring stories for and about educators. Your host, Scott Barron, is author of the critically acclaimed book, Love 'Em and Lead 'Em, and provides powerful insights and wisdom for those who heed the call to teach, coach, lead, and serve at all levels of education.
This is Scott Barron, and I'm honored to be your host for the Educators Among Us podcast. This is a program where we get to go and just share joy. We get to share perspective with those who serve in all levels of education, because we know this is hard work. We get to pour into the lives of other people and help them find a pathway to learning and to growth and even to find purpose. And that's the exciting thing that we love to do on this podcast, is also to share stories from people who they've actually found their purpose. They found a joy in the work. Even though it's hard work, they're working for more than just the job. They're working for the joy. And today, especially, I'm excited because Jennifer Rower has been a friend for quite some time. We've had the privilege of working together, and she leads a charter school network, as well as some really interesting schools in Texas where they are increasing the capacity for human greatness. They have a real passion for the work, and I've watched Jennifer grow in her leadership role there at BrainNation in San Antonio. And it's just been so cool, I guess you could say, just to see her grow as a leader and her transforming the lives of educators, because that's really the calling to lead a school, right? Yes, we're ultimately there for the transformation of students, but the call to leadership is to love and lead educators. We do our work through others, and creating that environment and understanding what makes educators tick and what makes them grow and how to love them and help them through all the joys of their lives. And that's part of the journey. We're not just raising kids, we're raising adults as well. And so the joy of this work is reflected in how Jennifer does her work. And so, Jennifer, thank you for being a part of this conversation this morning.
Oh, Scott, I'm so glad to be here. Very glad to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Absolutely. So, we love these conversations because we get to delve into sort of the background story of those who do accept the challenge as well as the privilege of leading schools and leading educators. And the first question that we like to start off with is, because of the profound impact of educators, is who is an educator that significantly impacted your life and why?
That is such a great question. I have so many teachers from elementary to middle school to high school. There's a couple that stand out, but one for sure that stands out completely, and that is Mr. Ponce. He was our high school band director. And so for 4 years, this educator asked me questions constantly about who I was, my family, and he would do this to everybody. I mean, he spent so much time with all of us. He would listen to our frustrations or our dramas or whatever showed up in high school. He would be there in it, listening. He, of course, in band, we would spend so much time together after school for practice, and then going to performances and whatnot. So it makes sense as an adult now to look back that it would make sense that he would have time to ask us and talk and have to gain that trust in that relationship. What all those things told me, and I think what it demonstrated, was that this educator, this person, cared. This person knew how to listen. And probably more than anything, what Mr. Ponce did for me is he challenged me all the time to do better, to take the next level of a music piece, and he just pushed me so hard. And I just, I did it because I trusted him. And eventually, I became drum major, and so all that pushing, all that
Really?
nudging, and
I didn't know this about you, Jennifer. That's really
it,
cool.
it
Okay.
is it like that. All I had been in different leadership roles, but that role at that moment of my life was big for me, and it was just, I can't even imagine having that opportunity without what he did from the beginning of my freshman year leading up to my senior year. I wouldn't probably be the same. I wouldn't be that person, and nor the person I am today, honestly.
Absolutely. So the idea of asking questions, there was a genuine interest. There was a care, I guess,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That's fascinating. I'm still in my mind picturing you leading the band, being this drum major. That's really awesome. I love that. What
Yeah.
instrument did you play?
Trumpet.
Oh, no way. Oh, that's
Yes.
good. I did as well, and loved marching band and all that came with it, and had some great adventures in those band camps and other
Oh,
stuff. So
completely
we
right.
we have some stories we've never even talked about now that we're gonna have to sit around and reflect a little bit and reminisce. So that's
Excellent.
really
Yes.
cool. So as you think about that, and one of the things I love about your story is that you didn't set out from the beginning of sort of your career to be an educator, right? I mean, there's a pathway for you, and you and I kind of have a similar pathway in that I didn't either. I didn't start off to go into education, family tree full of educators, but it just wasn't something that I originally sort of felt a leading towards, and then later just kind of through a variety of different means and sometimes even God's leading, had a chance to then get involved in a school, an education system, and kind of discovered a calling. And I think that's a bit of your story as well, where you made this transition into education. And tell us a little bit about sort of how that happened, and what I'm really interested to see as you moved into that role. What did you learn from your previous life that helped, and then what did you discover about schools?
That story starts back in 2007 when I was doing a search for BrainNation to look for a director of human resources. As you, I don't know if you recall, my undergrad is in business and with the focus of human resources. And so I was doing the search, trying to find them a director of human resources. And I gave them three fantastic candidates, and they ended up asking me to fill that role. And I didn't see that a mile away. It shocked me. Um, I will tell you that during that process of finding them those three candidates, I knew that they needed somebody special, because with the work that they were about to do was in essence changing education. It's specifically for students who are at risk. And that really spoke to my heart. And so this search that I did for them really allowed me to probably imagine, what would they need, and I'm just proud of that work that I did, but I didn't realize that it would eventually be me that would be in that role, and I it was difficult to make that decision because I was really happy where I was. And it was a stretch. Education, I was working across industries, working with different industries, and I was really enjoying that work. But I really felt this tug at, no, you need to be here, and I took a leap of faith and I accepted, and 18 years later, here I am, and I would never have imagined the path from then to now, and that usually has played true in my life. Is it's always been educators in my life moving me along. And this is no different. The superintendent at the time, my mentor, he was a visionary, and I was ready to follow him to the end of the earth and over, and believing in truly changing what education could look like for students, because I was one of those students.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I love about the story, and I of course have the privilege of speaking to lots of educators and even business leaders, boards, the folks around the country. And one of the things that we emphasize in telling some of the BrainNation story is, there's some schools that they're a bit sort of different. I mean, they're organized differently. And the one is the service to your institutional schools, where they're typically in some form of a managed facility that has students that are in some form of incarceration, and they're trying to find their purpose in life, and these are kids that they're not hitting anybody's sort of test scores, and they're kind of in the gap. And what I love about what the sort of the spirit of this organization is that there's a care for those kids, there's a love for them, and the passion of your educators. I mean, having taught some of them over the years, and some of their PD and other stuff, that they really love the work. And so I love the way that you created that culture for your educators, and that they have a passion, even though sometimes the kids are in difficult situations, they want to give them a hope, right? And that's what education really is about.
It is. It's our calling, and our team, our educators, those that are face to face with our kids, and those students, we call those schools that we have, that you're describing, are our impact schools. So our impact school students are 100% at risk. They're foster care. They're fighting a drug addiction, and they're on a sobriety journey. They are incarcerated, as you mentioned, absolutely. And the passion is number one that we look for. That for like I'm going to say somebody, an educator that we hire, that's what we're looking for. Is, do you understand how important it is that we get to, that we have this impact on those students? And it's a wonderful calling. It really is.
It is, and that your point about that in terms of the hiring process, that's a beautiful point. In that, so often we see schools that are hiring people based on their credentials and their experience, and for sure that's that's important. But way more important is the shared conviction. And that's what I love that you're talking about. Say, hey, you got to get our mission. We're here. We're doing hard work. I mean, we're helping students through not only just the general challenges of life, but also to overcome some difficult situations or decisions or other things. And we're giving hope. We're giving a joy and a self-discovery as well. And there's so many elements to that. I know your curriculum is very specifically designed to really enlighten that journey and help them to go on that discovery process. But it's very unique, and I love not only just the philosophy behind it, but the way that you guys have refined it and have continued to execute on that. It's just a beautiful thing, and I just want to just commend you and your team for that work, because it is life changing for many students and many families. And so we're thankful that you're out there in those communities, and you're making a difference in the lives of so many students.
We are honored to be out in communities. We want to be in more communities to make that impact, to share the model to where students really feel like they can belong, that they can find that joy, and then they can find greatness, whatever definition that looks like for them.
That's right. Absolutely. So being great, that's what we're trying to be as a school system, as educators as well, right? We don't want to be just status quo. We're not just trying to manage through. We want to step up our game. We want to find ways forward, and that's an ongoing challenge. Of course, is helping schools as we enter this new era of education. Is we as educators have to have a more adaptive spirit. We talk about growth mindset quite a bit, but now it's being tested now in some very significant ways. But I'm interested in that career change. What did you learn about schools and educators? As you kind of reflect back, 18 years doing this, what I guess would be what surprised you, as well as what have you learned that was most important to pass on to others that lead educators?
I've learned so much from being in an educational system. What really, what has surprised me probably more than anything is how in the moment educators are versus being in a business setting. In a business setting, you're looking at quarters, you're looking at monthly, you're looking at annual. Teachers, educators are in the moment. You don't find that in business. It's we're having a weekly meeting and this is when things happen. So being in the moment was a big adjustment, but it's so important to be in the moment.
Yeah. Well, it's like your band teacher, right? I mean,
Yes,
you're dealing with students on it's a real-time basis. This is not a dress rehearsal. It's not practice, right?
exactly.
This is happening
It is
now.
happening now.
Yes.
Yeah, and the experience from being in business to education. So that was a big shocker, is that being in the moment. But I will say that having a business mindset can be very beneficial in a school setting. It has shown up over time, having a different perspective. That definitely has played its part too. But I've learned more from educators than any business that I've ever worked in.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, and I think that you're right, especially as we're moving into a time when schools are having to find new ways to innovate and even compete. That some of those business skills, because sometimes most schools are not for profit, and sometimes we take that we convert that IRS designation into a goal, right? Nonprofit's not a goal. It's just an IRS designation. We have to run a business. We have to be responsible, and especially those that are in more competitive environments in different states and different organizational structures. So yeah, you're right. I mean, that's part of it. One of the things I learned about educators is that they like predictability. They don't like surprises very much, right? It's and so learning how to plan carefully and to communicate and to communicate and to communicate. There's a just sustaining trust is such a vital part of that community. I mean, you have to communicate well in any organization, different industries, et cetera. But in schools, it seems like, and I know that that the ecosystem is more fragile. That there's that the ability to kind of sustain that trust through that real time of dealing with families and students and situations that have a real, so I would say, a deep emotional element to them, right? We're not just making financial decisions or product decisions or whatever. We're actually shaping the trajectory of people's lives, right? And they kind of take that seriously. The communications and the emotions around it typically it can spike sometimes.
Yes. Our model, it's an inquiry model. And so that model really speaks to allowing us to help a student learn and that they know, they they activate that knowledge, they ask questions, they're inquisitive. And then what they do with that knowledge is they start to do something with it. They start creating something with that knowledge, and eventually they become something because of that knowledge. So our model includes the know, do, become. And today we don't, when you're talking about trust and you're talking about communication, this model, you can't do this model without those things. You have to follow, those are core tenets, if you will, to executing this model. And what we're finding, our students are really responding to it. You can see the confidence building. You can, with every inquiry project and every inquiry exercise, the whole process. It's a beautiful thing to see in our students. And in that process, our educators, our teachers genuinely are in there with them. So there's a benefit for teachers to see, oh, I'm not just teaching to a test. I'm not just teaching a program that was on a shelf or a program that is online. I'm actually interacting with the student, and as a teacher, gives me this freedom. Teacher that gives me this ability to help the student find their voice and find help them create their own story.
Absolutely. So you've been in this industry for quite some, almost 20 years, and obviously we've gone through a lot of change in this in a 20-year period. Schools have, and you got through COVID, you've gotten through the Great Recession, you've gotten through all different things in that period. We're moving into, of course, a lot of new challenges. A question for you, just as a leader in education, and you're involved in different organizations as well. What do you see as the biggest challenge that needs to be solved as soon as possible in schools? What's from your perspective? What's just looking from a big picture perspective? What is your advice on what do we need to work on?
The biggest challenge is that students are disconnected from education in the general education system. Students are disconnected. That's the biggest challenge. How to fix that, or how to make that connection, is to encourage. It's what we do right now at BrainNation. We actually go through this inquiry process. We're connecting. We're working with students directly. If we look at having that relationships with the student, like I did like Mr. Ponce and I had, if we go to those basic tenets, if you will, then that will help the connection. Families, we see this, families are shopping around for schools. Families are leaving traditional systems. We see that enrollment's dropping across the board. Well, it makes sense, because we are not truly meeting that challenge of connecting our students to education. And so that's what we need to focus on.
And do you see that as a parent challenge, as a community challenge, or do you think that schools bear the brunt of that responsibility?
I think since we are in the school system, we can control that. So then let's do our part with that. I do think that's important. But with school, I'm going to say, when it comes to creating a solution for this, as we're going through this process, we have to bring along parents. We have to bring along parents for the experience, and that relationship doesn't stop with the student. It extends to the parents. So our schools have to have healthy relationships with parents, and there needs to be communication there. And those are the things that without a doubt will help. And for us, we're showing success in that. We know this is working. We actually have a waiting list, Scott. A lot of schools are not seeing that success.
These are for your charter schools.
Yes, and so for our community schools, correct, for our community
Yes.
schools. And then on our impact school side, we are seeing a lot of requests for us to invite us into their facilities. So we're expanding in that space too, because of the work we're doing as well. What it boils down to is connecting the students to education, is our relationships with, and keeping that in the forefront. Mm-hmm.
Well, and you've gone through that transition process of now successfully leading now multiple charter schools as well, and totally different sort of operational models between the two, because one, you have limited parent involvement, and one, you have a lot of parent involvement, and so there's different points of tension and design there. But there is, I think, sometimes especially in the United States, there has been a shift over the last couple of decades of putting more responsibility on the educators for some of that, when in reality we can influence a little bit of that, but in the end we don't have those levers or those variables we really don't control them, when it comes to, the home life and trauma and parents, value and emphasis on education, some of the socioeconomic factors, even their attitude, their peer group. There's the majority of the variables that go into student growth. Schools have very little control over those, right? We have control over three main variables being, the people, our educators, right? The quality and the qualities of our educators, and of course the curriculum. And you guys have done a phenomenal job of designing a curriculum very specific to your target market of students. And then of course, the culture, the culture within the school and how we interact and the behavior of both our educators and our students and how we set expectations, et cetera. That's about it. I mean, if you think about it. So yeah, I think there's sort of a challenge now to that model is, again, specifically speaking to what's happening in the U.S. There are sort of different factors that come into other countries, but what we're seeing right now is schools beginning to understand those variables and doubling down on the things they actually control, and especially on people. We're in the people business, and I think that's one of the things that your background is such a huge advantage, having been in HR, right? Is you get that, and so many schools, sometimes. I know you know this, but sometimes and it's almost August, right? And unfortunately, right, so we're moving into that time of life in the school leadership where we kind of make compromise decisions. We kind of go, hey, the school year is about to start. I gotta have a teacher, and sometimes it's like, okay, I'll take that one. I know they don't like kids, but still, I gotta have them in there because I gotta have I gotta have a teacher. I gotta go. The school year is relentless, and so sometimes those HR decisions are made more reactively, sometimes even out of fear, instead of out of courage and leadership and purpose and mission, right? And so that's one of the things I think that does give you an advantage is you understand those principles and practices of true talent strategy, because that's the essence of school leadership.
I think that for us, we're in a fortunate position because we planned well ahead of time, and I'm talking about over years. When so this model that we have is 10 years old, but the last 5 years, it's really come. We failed, we tried, we tweaked it, all of that work and I keep referring to this model because it is really the core of who we are. And this model, the last 5 years, has been executed in such a manner that it naturally creates this culture of belonging, of respect for our educators, to trust them to teach, to have that creativity, and for us for them to know that we trust them to do so, as they're working with students one-on-one. And so I'm proud to say that our retention is really high right now, which is fantastic. But it was a journey for listeners out there to know, if you're struggling, know it doesn't always it doesn't have to be that way, and you could move in a direction to where you're then having high retention. And that's all of our goals. And there'll be ebbs and flows of that cycle that happens. But yeah, having really, I'm going to say, having that understanding of how important retention and culture is to that retention. They have to be together. And our administrators have created wonderful cultures in their respective schools. Our impact schools and our inspire schools, each of them have their own identity. So they attract people based on their purpose at that school. It's really inspiring to see our leaders really just take responsibility and lead those respective campuses. You and I both know the impact to a student is going to happen between a teacher, and that teacher's success will have I'm going to say that teacher's success is probably connected very tightly to that administrator and how they grow them and that relationship with them. And so backing into the from a student to a teacher, teacher to an administrator, administrator to a team, and then from a district level that we are relaying the vision and the mission properly, and that it's clear, and all the way through. Then we're so proud of where we're at right now, honestly,
Should be.
with our retention,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
so
Retaining the right people,
yes, the right
right?
people.
Not just people, but the
No,
right
the
people.
right
Yes,
people.
yeah,
Hmm.
who get it, who want it, who have the ability to do it. Yeah, they get the shared conviction
Yes,
and then have the right attitude pieces. And that's the thing that I think. Again, I think that's a distinct advantage that you and your team have is a perspective on it's the living curriculum. Right? It's well, I get all the other stuff, the technology, the facilities, the other. It's great. I mean, you have and Frank particularly, you have a very distinctive facility design that really pops. But that's not the difference. I mean, in that building, sometimes there's been great things happening, and some stuff you go, whoa, time out, hang on a second, right? So, but you've refined that, I think, over the last few years in ways that there's a real discipline around it. It's not just something that we say we do, but there's an authenticity to it, and
absolutely.
that's a big advantage that you guys have. So, what advice would you give then, having done this now for quite some time? What advice would you give to education leaders, especially those that might be new to administration?
I would I would say plan is probably what every administrator knows to do, is to plan. Know that the plan won't happen the way you want it to happen. You have to just, but you can't forget to plan. So plan, but be in the moment as things happen and give yourself permission to fail. Give your permission to be honest with your teachers and your parents and your students. Be honest about where you're at, because
And vulnerable,
that is,
right?
yes, you have to be vulnerable. That's what being human is about, and we're missing that in education.
Listen, you've used the F word a couple of times here, and it's dangerous, right? And of course, we're talking about the word fail, right? And that's not a word we use lightly in education. I mean, when was the last time we celebrated, someone who failed? We celebrate A's. Come on, Jennifer, right? Honor roll. That's what it's about. And you're absolutely right. And especially as we're entering, this new era, we're going to fail. We're going to have to try things. We're going to have to do what in other industries is common practice. You guys have been doing this because I've watched you, but there has to be research and development.
Mhm.
There has to be trials and sort of pilots if we try things. And if it doesn't work, you stop doing it. And so many schools, it gets started and then trying to stop it. And it's like there's no brakes on this thing. There's no way to get it out of the schedule or out of the system or whatever. We're going to have to find much, much faster ways to listen, like you said, to learn, and then to adjust. Because there's a common term in the military that says no battle plan survives the battlefield. Right, you always have to adjust, and that's true in like sports. It's true in lesson planning. You can have lesson plans, and if you stick to your lesson plan all the way through, and no one's responding to it, that's on you. That's not on the kids. That's what highly effective educators, they do listen and they adjust.
Mhm.
Yeah, they adjust their technique, they adjust their plans, their time schedule, right? And that's something that, especially in your system, the educators are trying to function much more as guides rather than just dispensers. And that's an important mindset, is that we don't have to control everything. Well, we don't anyway, but it's a humbling reminder to say, yeah,
Exactly.
actually we don't, right? And being able to adapt and not to stubbornly hang on to things. So I think it's a great point, especially during this time that we're in. So then, as a part of that sort of last question here is as we move forward, right? What questions should education leaders be asking in order to really to grow and improve, to be, as you mentioned, use this term, either excellent or great, right? What is it? What questions now should we be asking?
We really need to be asking ourselves, how can we leverage technology to save time? How can we leverage technology to help self-care? And how can we leverage technology to help our students in that journey with our relationship with students? And it's just how to leverage it properly. And there is no one better to answer that question than our educators.
Yeah, right. The ones that are willing to explore, because there are some that are kind of digging in their heels and saying, this is the way I've been doing it for 30 years, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? And that's going to be a tough position to be in going forward, because we have, like you said, we've got tools now that allow us to be more efficient at how we do things, even more effective, and even innovative and create. And one of the questions that we're exploring now with a lot of the members of the School Growth Network is, how do we shift our models, and I would say the model, the entire school design, the systems, the processes, the rules, the schedule. How do we shift that so that we are doing what was, I think, a big part of the core philosophy for your schools, which is teaching students instead of classes, right? Which is thinking about that personalization, the individualization, but it's also allowing a higher degree of autonomy, right? Allowing sort of that learning path to be tailored to the student and where they are and who they are and where they're going. With certainly with accountability, with guidance, but also allowing some of that freedom to make decisions and to use different tools, both live as well as online and other resources. And so, yeah, it's a new day, and I think being able to Piaget talked about in his theory of learning, right? There's accommodation and there's assimilation, and most of the time it's much easier to do assimilation because we're just kind of accepting that into our current paradigm. But now it's a different deal. The level of accommodation that has to happen is going to be significantly higher, because now we're having to accept new paradigms of the way that schools work, the way the instructions work, and the way the students, go about the learning process. This is going to be interesting, and I think this is where wisdom becomes much more valuable than knowledge. And that's going to be hard for some educators because they're so used to hanging on to their knowledge as being sort of their value point. And that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough these days because, quite frankly, most of us have pretty significantly high levels of access to knowledge. That's actually not the challenge anymore. I've got access to knowledge in almost every subject matter, way more than one person could know, right? So now, now the challenge for educators is to be a resource of wisdom and in relationships and connecting dots, and it's a different level of responsibility now that the most effective educators have, and those that have those habits of character, I think, are going to have a distinct advantage, and you've, I think, done a great job of hiring and building a team. And that's a huge advantage for you that I think you're going to be able to sustain momentum at BrainNation in ways that others will struggle with, especially as Texas enters school choice and does other things. So,
I know
that will be interesting.
Yeah, we're in our own new system here. But yes, right. It's a team, Scott. You know that.
Yes.
I'm not doing anything. It's our team. They're doing it all, right. And I'm just so proud of the work they're doing to really connect students to education.
Yes. Well, Jennifer, thank you. Thank you for being there for those educators and for loving them like you do, but also then changing the lives of students through your impact schools and your other schools that just enables them to to make a difference in there and throughout Texas. And I love the work that you do and just your spirit. It's exciting, and I love being part of. It's just kind of watching your growth. So thank you for being there, for loving those educators like you do, and providing a great path forward for so many people. You make a big difference and a blessing to a lot of people.
Thank you, Scott. Really appreciate your leadership and your wisdom.
Oh, my pleasure, for sure. All right. Well, hey, thank you guys for being here, and I hope that you're able to check out what they're doing at BrainNation and learn from some of the things that they've achieved and have established there for their schools. And it's if you're ever in San Antonio, it's worth a drive by. It's worth a visit to see what's happening there. Thank you again for all that you do. Remember, our calling as educators and as education leaders is love them and lead them. Love them and lead them, my friend. This is Scott.
Thank you for joining us for the Educators Among Us podcast and for your courageous commitment to this noble calling. We get you and the challenges of this work. To stay connected with this community, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and weekly encouragement at educatorsamongus.com.